The rules of sexism do not free men from the terror of violence, they only keep men from complaining about it. When we commit violence against an infant girl, we call it child abuse. When we commit violence against an infant boy, we call it circumcision. The sexist perception that violence by anyone against only women is anti-woman, while violence by a woman against only men is just generic violence, creates a political demand for laws that are even more protective of women. This is at the basis of the innocent woman defense, the innocent woman principle. Women are believed when they say they are innocent of violence and most easily doubted when they say they are guilty of violence. Today, violence against women is rightly abhorred. But we call violence against men entertainment. Think of football, boxing, wrestling. All are games used to sugarcoat violence against men, originally in need of sugarcoating so our team, or our society, could bribe its best protectors to sacrifice themselves. The one-sided funding creates one-sided images that reinforce the press defining as progress and examination of only women's issues. Thus, a quarter-century's worth of studies showing domestic violence against men to be more than equal to domestic violence against women receive so little publicity as to barely make a dent on the public's consciousness. Imagine how we would feel if I began this section saying, "Today, violence against women is rightly applauded." We would know I favored the death of women. When we applaud for violence against men, we favor the death of men. We do it because we have learned that the more effectively we prepare men to sacrifice themselves, the more we are protected. There is virtually no funding to study the validity of the more muted complaints of men, to study when a false accusation is being used as a weapon to keep the children from dad, or when the child is being bad-mouthed by the other parent, or when access to the child is being prevented, or when statistics about deadbeat dads are including men who are dead, unemployed, or denied their children, or when men are victims of domestic violence. When Time magazine ran a cover story of each of the 464 people shot in a single week, it concluded, the victims were frequently those most vulnerable in society, the poor, the young, the abandoned, the sick, and the elderly. When you read that, did you think of men? One had to count the pictures to discover that 84% of the faces behind the statistics were those of men and boys. In fact, the victims were mostly poor men, young men, abandoned men, sick men, and elderly men. Yet a woman, and only a woman, was featured on the cover. Men are the invisible victims of America's violence. Violence against men as women's liberation, Thelma and Louise film, was widely touted as a film of women's liberation. It was, for example, the only film celebrated by the National Organization for Women at its 25th convention. Never in American history have two men been celebrated as heroes of men's liberation after they deserted their wives, met one female jerk after another, and then killed one woman and left another woman stuffed in a trunk in 120-degree desert heat. Male serial killers are condemned, not celebrated, at men's liberation conventions. The moment a men's movement calls it a sign of empowerment or brotherhood when men kill women is the moment I will protest it as fascism.